The notification alert on my phone buzzed at 2:17 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. Credit monitoring app. New inquiry on your credit report, First National Bank. Loan application $200,000. I stared at the screen while sitting in my parked car outside the grocery store. I hadn't applied for any loans. I immediately opened my banking app and checked my credit report. There it was, a hard inquiry from First National Bank for a commercial real estate loan. The application had been submitted yesterday, using my social security number, employment information, and what appeared to be my electronic signature. But I knew exactly who had access to my personal information. My sister Rebecca had been living in my guest room for 6 months, supposedly saving money to get back on her feet after her divorce. During that time she'd had plenty of opportunities to photograph my documents, memorize my social security number, and observe my digital signatures on legitimate transactions. I drove home and found Rebecca in my kitchen, making herself lunch with groceries I'd bought. She looked up cheerfully when I entered. "Hey sis. How was your day?" "Interesting," I replied, setting my purse on the counter. "I got a credit alert about a loan application I didn't submit." Rebecca's expression didn't change. "That's weird. Probably identity theft. You should call the bank and report it." "Good idea," I said. "I'll do that right now." I called First National Bank and spoke with a loan officer named Marcus Chin. After verifying my identity, he pulled up the application. "Yes, Ms. Davis, we have your commercial real estate loan application here. You applied for $200,000 to purchase a rental property on Maple Street. The application was submitted electronically yesterday with all required documentation." "I didn't submit that application," I said clearly. "Someone used my personal information without permission." "I see. Well, we'll need to investigate this. Can you come in tomorrow to review the application and provide a statement?" "Absolutely. What time?" "How about 2 p.m.? Bring photo ID and any evidence of fraud you might have." After hanging up, I watched Rebecca finish her sandwich. She was scrolling through real estate listings on her phone, occasionally muttering things like, "perfect investment property," and "this neighborhood is really up and coming." That evening, while Rebecca was out with friends, I went into my home office and began documenting everything. As a software security specialist, I was meticulous about digital evidence preservation. I had backup cameras in my home office, keyloggers on my personal computers, and detailed logs of who accessed my wireless network and when. I pulled up the security footage from my office camera for the past week. There it was, clear video of Rebecca sitting at my desk 2 days ago, using my computer while I was at work. She'd spent over 3 hours accessing my email, photographing documents from my filing cabinet, and practicing forging my signature on scratch paper. The keylogger data showed she'd accessed my password manager, copied my bank account information, and downloaded copies of my tax returns and pay stubs. She'd also Googled how to forge electronic signatures and commercial real estate loans for rental properties. My network logs showed her personal laptop had connected to my home Wi-Fi and uploaded large files to a cloud storage account. She'd been systematically collecting my personal information for days. But the most damning evidence was a recording from my digital assistant. Rebecca had made several phone calls from my kitchen, not realizing that my smart home system logs and stores audio when triggered by certain keywords like loan application and signature. In one recorded conversation with someone named Marcus, Rebecca said, "I need this loan and your credit is better. You'll never find out anyway. I'll just submit the application using your information, get the money, buy the property, and pay you back from the rental income." In another call, she told someone, "My sister is so trusting and disorganized. She never checks her credit reports or bank statements carefully. I can probably get away with this for months before she notices anything." The next day, I arrived at First National Bank with a thick folder of printed evidence. Marcus Chin reviewed the loan application with me, and it was immediately clear that Rebecca had done her homework. She'd used my correct employer information, salary details, and even forged a convincing electronic version of my signature. "This is sophisticated fraud," Marcus said, examining the documents. "Whoever did this had extensive access to your personal information." "I know exactly who did it," I replied. "My sister Rebecca has been living in my house for 6 months. I have video evidence of her accessing my computer and forging my signature." Marcus's eyes widened. You have video evidence? I showed him the security camera footage on my phone. The video clearly showed Rebecca sitting at my desk, practicing my signature and accessing my personal files. We need to involve law enforcement immediately, Marcus said. This is federal fraud involving a $200,000 loan application. I'm calling the FBI Financial Crimes Division. Within 2 hours, FBI Special Agent Sarah Martinez arrived at the bank. She reviewed my evidence folder with professional interest. Ms. Davis, this is some of the most comprehensive fraud documentation I've seen. You have video evidence, digital forensics, network logs, and audio recordings. This case is ironclad. My sister doesn't know I keep detailed digital records of everything in my house, I explained. She assumed I would never find out or wouldn't have proof if I did. Agent Martinez studied the timeline I'd created. According to your evidence, she's been planning this fraud for over 2 weeks. The premeditation and sophistication suggest this could be charged as a federal felony. What happens next? I asked. We'll execute a search warrant on your sister's possessions and interview her about the fraud. Based on this evidence, I expect we'll file charges for bank fraud, identity theft, and computer crimes. The potential sentence is 5 to 10 years in federal prison. That evening, I went home to find Rebecca excitedly showing me real estate listings on her laptop. Sarah, look at this property. It's perfect for a rental investment. 3 bedrooms, good neighborhood, priced under market value. I'm thinking about making an offer. That sounds expensive, I said casually. How are you planning to finance it? Oh, I've got some money saved up, she said vaguely. Plus, I might be able to get a loan based on my income potential. Income potential? Well, once I get back on my feet financially, my earning capacity should qualify me for pretty much any loan I need. I nodded sympathetically. That makes sense. Banking relationships are really important. Rebecca beamed with confidence. Exactly. I've actually already started the process with First National Bank. They're very impressed with my financial profile. The next morning I was at work when my phone rang. It was Rebecca calling from home. Sarah, there are FBI agents at your house. Her voice was panicked. They have a search warrant and they're asking about loan applications and bank fraud. What's going on? I have no idea, I said calmly. You should cooperate with them completely. They're taking my laptop and my phone. They said something about document fraud and identity theft. This is crazy. Just tell them the truth, Rebecca. If you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. 2 hours later, Agent Martinez called me. We've arrested your sister on federal charges of bank fraud, identity theft, and computer crimes. She initially denied everything, but when we showed her the video evidence, she admitted to the fraud. How did she react? Shock, then anger. She kept saying it was just a loan and that she planned to pay it back, so it wasn't really theft. She didn't seem to understand that loan fraud is a federal crime regardless of intent to repay. What happens now? She'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. With the evidence you provided, the prosecutor expects to get a conviction. Your sister is looking at significant prison time. That evening, I received dozens of phone calls from family members who'd heard about Rebecca's arrest. The reactions were mixed. My mother called crying, "How could you have your own sister arrested? Family should stick together during difficult times." Mom, Rebecca committed federal crimes using my identity. She could have destroyed my credit and left me liable for $200,000 in fraudulent debt. But she's going through a divorce. She needed help, not criminal charges. She needed help, so she decided to commit identity theft? How does that make sense? My brother Michael had a different perspective. I can't believe Rebecca was stupid enough to try this with you. Doesn't she know you document everything? Apparently not, I said. She thought I was too trusting and disorganized to catch her. My cousin Lisa was furious with me. You could have just told Rebecca no if you didn't want to co-sign a loan. There was no reason to destroy her life with criminal charges. Lisa, I didn't co-sign anything. Rebecca forged my signature and stole my identity to commit bank fraud. This wasn't about me refusing to help her. This was about her committing federal crimes. You're being dramatic. It's just paperwork. It's $200,000 in fraudulent debt that I would have been legally responsible for. If Rebecca's plan had worked, I could have lost my house, my savings, and my credit rating. The preliminary hearing was held a week later. I testified about the evidence I'd collected and explained how Rebecca had systematically gathered my personal information over several weeks. Rebecca's defense attorney tried to portray the fraud as a misunderstanding between sisters, claiming Rebecca believed she had permission to use my information. But the recorded phone calls where she explicitly stated I would never find out, and that she was taking advantage of my trusting nature undermined that defense completely. The prosecutor played the audio recording where Rebecca said, "My sister is so trusting and disorganized. She never checks her credit reports or bank statements carefully. I can probably get away with this for months before she notices anything." The judge was not sympathetic to Rebecca's situation. "Ms. Davis, regardless of your personal circumstances, loan fraud involving $200,000 is a serious federal crime. The evidence shows clear premeditation and deception." Rebecca was bound over for trial on charges of bank fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, and computer crimes. Bail was set at $75,000, which she couldn't afford. While Rebecca sat in federal detention awaiting trial, I received a visit from her divorce attorney, David Walsh. "Ms. Davis, I represent your sister in her divorce proceedings. I wanted to discuss the impact of these criminal charges on her case." "What kind of impact?" "Well, her ex-husband is now seeking full custody of their children, citing the federal fraud charges as evidence that Rebecca is unfit as a parent. He's also demanding that she be required to undergo psychological evaluation before any custody agreement." "I see. Rebecca asked me to speak with you about possibly dropping the charges. She's willing to plead guilty to lesser charges if you'll ask the prosecutor to reduce the penalties." "Mr. Walsh, these are federal charges. I can't drop them even if I wanted to. The FBI and federal prosecutors are handling this case based on evidence of federal crimes. But you're the victim. Your opinion carries weight with prosecutors. My opinion is that someone who commits premeditated fraud involving $200,000 should face appropriate legal consequences. Rebecca didn't make a mistake. She planned and executed a sophisticated scheme to steal my identity and defraud a bank." David Walsh looked frustrated. "Ms. Davis, your sister is facing 8 to 10 years in federal prison. Her children will grow up without their mother. Is that really what you want?" "What I wanted was for Rebecca to get legitimate help with her financial problems instead of committing federal crimes using my identity. She made her choices." 3 months later, facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of a lengthy trial, Rebecca accepted a plea bargain. She pled guilty to bank fraud and identity theft in exchange for a reduced sentence of 4 years in federal prison. At the sentencing hearing, Rebecca was allowed to make a statement to the court. "Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I was desperate after my divorce and I thought I could handle this situation without anyone getting hurt. I never meant to damage my sister's credit or put her in financial jeopardy." She turned to look at me in the gallery. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I know you trusted me and I betrayed that trust. I thought I could fix everything before you found out, but I realize now how stupid and selfish that was." The judge sentenced Rebecca to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay $25,000 in restitution for the bank's investigation costs and administrative expenses. After the sentencing, I was approached by Agent Martinez in the courthouse hallway. "How do you feel about the outcome?" she asked. "Relieved," I said honestly. Rebecca needed to face consequences for her actions, but I'm glad she accepted responsibility instead of forcing a trial. "Your documentation made this case airtight. Without your digital evidence, it would have been much harder to prove premeditation and sophisticated planning. I learned early in my cybersecurity career that digital crimes leave digital evidence." Rebecca assumed I was too trusting or too technologically naive to catch her. 6 months later, I received a letter from Rebecca, written from federal prison. "Dear Sarah, I've had a lot of time to think about what I did and why I did it. I was angry about my divorce, scared about my financial future, and jealous of your stability and success. Instead of asking for help or finding legitimate solutions, I chose to betray your trust and commit crimes. I know now that my actions could have destroyed your financial life. If the bank had approved that loan, you would have been legally responsible for $200,000 in debt you didn't create. I was willing to risk your entire future to solve my temporary problems. I don't expect you to forgive me, But I want you to know that I understand now why you had to report me to the FBI. You were protecting yourself from the consequences of my crimes, just like anyone would. The other inmates here think I'm crazy for being mad at my sister instead of being mad at you for snitching. But you didn't snitch, you documented evidence of federal crimes I committed against you. There's a difference. I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship, but I understand if you can't trust me again. I proved that I was willing to destroy your life to fix mine, and that's not something a person gets over easily. Rebecca. I never responded to that letter. Rebecca served 3.5 years of her 4-year sentence and was released on good behavior. She now lives in a different state and has supervised visitation with her children every other weekend. Our mother still believes I should have handled it within the family, instead of involving law enforcement. She thinks Rebecca's punishment was too harsh for what she calls a family misunderstanding. But loan fraud isn't a family misunderstanding. Identity theft isn't a family problem. When someone systematically collects your personal information, forges your signature, and submits fraudulent loan applications using your identity, that's a federal crime, regardless of whether you're related to the perpetrator. Rebecca gambled that family loyalty would protect her from the consequences of her crimes. She assumed I would be too shocked, too embarrassed, or too concerned about family harmony to pursue federal charges. He was wrong. Family relationships don't create immunity from criminal law. Trust, once broken by premeditated fraud, cannot be repaired by simply asking for forgiveness. And someone who is willing to destroy your financial life to solve their own problems has demonstrated that they value their convenience more than your welfare. I kept detailed digital records because cybersecurity is my profession, but also because I learned early that predators of all kinds count on their victims being too trusting, too disorganized, or too conflict-averse to gather evidence and pursue justice. Rebecca spent weeks planning her fraud, confident that I would never discover it or never have enough proof to stop her. The security cameras, network logs, audio recordings, and keystroke data proved her wrong. Sometimes protecting yourself means being willing to prosecute the people who are supposed to love you. Sometimes family loyalty means being loyal to legal boundaries instead of criminal behavior. And sometimes the people who tell you to handle it within the family are the same people who would never risk their own financial security to enable someone else's federal crimes. The sound of Rebecca's office door bursting open that morning wasn't just the sound of justice. It was the sound of consequences catching up with someone who believed family relationships would shield her from federal law. They didn't.
You have no proof this house is yours, Amanda shouted as she threw another box of my things onto the lawn. My brother let you live here, but without a marriage certificate, you're nothing. I stood in the doorway, watching her toss up 12 years of my life. My hands shook, but I kept my voice calm. You're wrong, Amanda. I have proof. She spun around, her expensive purse swinging. Oh really? Then show me. Where are the papers? She laughed. That's what I thought. Nothing. Just like your so-called marriage, nothing legal, nothing real. My name is Olivia, and 3 months ago, I thought my life was perfect. Then my husband, Marcus, disappeared with his pregnant girlfriend. He left only a text. No marriage registration means no divorce. You keep your job, I keep everything else. But Marcus had no idea what this house really held. Amanda walked around like she already owned the place, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors. I'm actually doing you a favor. Marcus wants his girlfriend to move in next week. You should leave while you still have some dignity. I glanced at the old clock in the corner. My grandfather had built this house himself, and before he died, he had told me something odd. Never move that clock. It holds more than just time. I stepped toward it. Actually, there's something you should see. Amanda sighed. Another worthless old thing. Give it up, Olivia. This house belongs to Marcus now. I ran my fingers along the clock's frame. My grandfather had a habit of hiding important things in strange places. Amanda frowned. What are you talking about? I opened the glass door and reached inside. Feeling for a small hidden latch, I pressed it. Click. A secret compartment popped open. Amanda's face turned pale as I pulled out a yellowed envelope. What's that? I smiled. The original deed to the house, dated 1962. Along with my grandfather's will, he left everything to me, his only grandchild. All legally notarized and filed with the county. Amanda lunged for the papers, but I stepped back. Careful. These are legal documents. She stammered. You're lying. Marcus said the house was in his name. I shook my head. Marcus lied. He never owned this house. My grandfather never trusted him. Seems he was right. Amanda's confidence crumbled. This is ridiculous. I'm calling the police. I pulled out my phone. Good idea. My lawyer would love to explain how trying to kick the legal owner out of their own home is a crime. Silence. Outside, the wind scattered the papers Amanda had thrown out. Her hands clenched and unclenched. You knew, she whispered. You knew all along and let me. Make a fool of yourself. I finished. Yes. Consider it a lesson in humility. Now, why don't you start bringing my boxes back inside? Amanda's mouth opened and closed, but she had no comeback. Finally, she grabbed her purse. This isn't over. Actually, it is, I said, holding up the documents. And when you tell Marcus, remind him my grandfather's lawyer has copies of everything. I bet he'll love knowing he's been living in my house all these years. Amanda stormed off and sped away in her car. I turned to the clock, finally understanding my grandfather's wisdom. He had protected me even beyond his lifetime. I carefully placed the papers back inside the hidden compartment. Time reveals all truths, he had said. The battle wasn't over. Marcus would be back, probably with lawyers. But for the first time since he left, I felt strong. This house was mine, and I wasn't going anywhere. 2 days after Amanda's dramatic exit, I was sorting through old photos in the living room when my phone buzzed. Marcus's name flashed across the screen, accompanied by a text that made my blood boil. Amanda told me about your little stunt with the clock. Nice try, but fake papers won't hold up in court. Lisa and I will be moving in next week. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I glanced at the clock, its steady ticking a reminder of everything still hidden inside. Poor Marcus, always so confident, always so wrong. Before I could respond, another text came through. My lawyer will contact you. Be smart about this, Olivia. I smiled, remembering the other envelopes still tucked away in the clock's secret compartment. Grandfather hadn't just left me property deeds, he'd left me insurance. The doorbell rang, and through the window, I saw Marcus strutting up the walkway, Lisa trailing behind him. She couldn't have been more than 25, her baby bump visible under her tight dress. My heart twisted, but not from jealousy. They had no idea what was coming. Olivia, Marcus said as I opened the door, trying to sound authoritative. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe, blocking their entry. About what? How you abandoned our 12-year relationship with a text message, or about how you sent your sister to do your dirty work? Lisa stepped forward, her hand protectively over her stomach. Look, we don't want any drama. Just accept that it's over and leave. That's right, Marcus added, pulling out some papers. My lawyer drew these up. Sign them, and we'll let you take your personal belongings. I took the papers, pretending to read them. Let me? That's interesting, considering this is my house. Marcus laughed, but I caught the nervous edge in it. Amanda mentioned you'd found some old papers. They're probably not even real. This house has been in my family's name for years. Has it? I walked to the clock, feeling their eyes follow me. Would you like to know what else my grandfather left in here besides the deed? More fake documents. Marcus scoffed, but he stepped closer, curiosity getting the better of him. I opened the clock's hidden compartment again, this time removing a different envelope. Actually, these are bank statements, from an account you opened 3 years ago. The color drained from Marcus's face. Lisa looked between us, confused. An account, I continued, where you've been transferring company funds. Money that isn't yours to take. My grandfather was a founding board member of that company, remember? He kept tabs on everything, even after retirement. You're bluffing, Marcus whispered, but his hands had started to shake. Am I? I pulled out the statements. Want to explain these transfers to your boss, or should I? I'm sure the board would be very interested in where their money's been going. Lisa stepped back, her expression changing. Marcus, what is she talking about? Nothing, he snapped. She's making things up. Oh, and Lisa, I added, pulling out another paper. You might want to ask him about his other girlfriend in Sacramento. The one he visits on his business trips. My grandfather had friends everywhere, including private investigators. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa's face had gone from confused to horrified. Other girlfriend? Marcus? What? "She's lying," Marcus shouted, but the panic in his voice gave him away. "The proof is all here," I said calmly. "Every transaction, every hotel receipt, every secret meeting. My grandfather knew you'd show your true colors eventually. He just wanted to make sure I was protected when you did." Lisa backed away toward the door, tears streaming down her face. "You told me I was special, that Olivia was the only other woman you'd ever been with." "Lisa, wait," Marcus called after her, but she was already running to her car. He turned back to me, fury and fear battling in his expression. "You've ruined everything." "No, Marcus, you did that all on your own. Now, about those papers you wanted me to sign." I ripped them in half, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. "I think we're done here. Unless you'd like me to share these documents with the company board." Marcus stared at me for a long moment, defeat finally registering in his eyes. Without another word, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I returned the documents to their hiding place in the clock, my hands trembling slightly. The ticking seemed louder now, like a heartbeat, strong and steady. My phone buzzed again. A text from Lisa. "I'm so sorry, I had no idea about any of it." I didn't respond. Her awakening wasn't my responsibility. Instead, I sat in my grandfather's old armchair, looking at the clock that had protected me when I needed it most. "Time reveals all truths," I whispered, remembering his words. The old clock had revealed more than just property rights. It had exposed the true nature of the man I'd almost spent my life with. The sun was setting outside, casting long shadows through the windows. Somewhere in a city, Marcus was probably scrambling to cover his tracks, and Lisa was facing her own harsh realities. But here, in this house that had always been mine, I was finally at peace. The clock kept ticking, steady and sure, guarding whatever other secrets my grandfather might have left behind. But those were stories for another day. A month after Marcus's dramatic exit, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, watching the morning light filter through the windows. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if a heavy shadow had been lifted. My phone lit up with a message from my grandfather's old friend and lawyer, Tom Harrison. "Just thought you'd want to know. Marcus resigned from the company yesterday. Seems he's taking a job out of state. Your grandfather would be proud of how you handled everything." I smiled, remembering how Marcus had tried to contact me several times over the past weeks, his messages shifting from threats to desperate pleas. Each time, I'd simply send him photos of the banking documents until finally he understood there was no way out. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. To my surprise, Amanda stood on my porch, looking very different from the last time I'd seen her. Gone was the designer outfit and superior attitude. Instead, she seemed smaller, almost apologetic. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I considered closing the door, but something in her expression made me pause. 5 minutes. She followed me into the living room, her eyes immediately going to the clock. "I owe you an apology," she began, twisting her hands nervously. "I was horrible to you, and I believed everything Marcus told me without question." "Yes, you were, and yes, you did," I agreed, watching her carefully. "I didn't know," she continued, "about the money he was stealing, or about his other girlfriends. When Lisa told me everything." She trailed off, shaking her head. I felt so stupid. The clock ticked steadily in the background as I considered her words. "Your brother made fools of a lot of people," I said finally. "But you chose to be cruel. That was your decision." "I know," she whispered, "and I'm truly sorry. I always thought you weren't good enough for our family. Now I realize we weren't good enough for you." I let her words hang in the air for a moment, remembering all the small cruelties, the dismissive comments, the ways she tried to make me feel less than. But I also remembered my grandfather's words about forgiveness being a choice we make for ourselves, not others. "Thank you for the apology," I said finally. "I appreciate you coming here to say it in person." Amanda nodded, then reached into her bag. "I found these while helping Marcus pack," she said, pulling out a stack of old photos. "They're of you and your grandfather from when you were little. I thought you might want them." My heart caught as I looked at the familiar images, my grandfather and me working on the house together, planting the garden, him teaching me about the clock. In every photo, his eyes held that special twinkle, as if he knew something the rest of the world didn't. "He was an amazing man," Amanda said softly. "I wish I'd taken the time to know him better." As she left, I placed the photos on the mantel beside the clock. Its steady ticking had become a comfort now, a reminder that time indeed reveals all truths, but it also heals all wounds. Later that evening, as I sat in my grandfather's old chair, I opened the clock one last time. Behind the compartment holding the deeds and bank statements, I found one final envelope I hadn't noticed before. Inside was a letter, written in my grandfather's familiar handwriting. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered what the clock holds and you've needed its protection. I'm sorry you had to face such difficulties, but I'm proud of the strength I know you've shown. Remember, a house is more than just walls and deeds. It's a home for your spirit, a shelter for your dreams. I built this place not just with lumber and nails, but with love and hope for the future, your future. The clock will always keep time for you, marking not just hours and minutes, but moments of courage, growth, and truth. Let its steady ticking remind you that you are stronger than you know, wiser than you believe, and more loved than you can imagine. Take care of our home, my darling girl, and know that I'm always with you in every tick and talk of our faithful timekeeper. All my love, Grandfather. I carefully folded the letter and returned it to its hiding place. Outside, the sun was setting, casting golden light through the windows. The house felt alive with memories, not just of the recent drama, but of all the love and wisdom my grandfather had built into its very foundation. The clock kept its steady rhythm, marking not just the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another. My chapter, in my home, on my terms. Time, as my grandfather always said, reveals all truths. But sometimes, if we're lucky, it also reveals exactly who we were meant to be all along. She's just after the money, Sophia shouted, standing at the head of the table. Look at these bank statements. While we were mourning Dad's death, she was secretly taking money from the family accounts. I sat quietly, watching her dramatic performance. She waved the papers, paused for effect, and glanced at the others. It was all carefully planned. My name is Alexandra, and at that moment, my family was turning against me. Is this true, Alex? My mother-in-law, Margaret, asked, her voice shaking. She clutched her pearls, a nervous habit since Dad passed 3 months ago. Did you really do this? I met her eyes. No, I said. I didn't. But Sophia wasn't done. She threw more papers on the table. Then explained these. Transfers, withdrawals, while you were handling Dad's estate. My brother James wouldn't even look at me. He just stared at his hands, like when we were kids and Sophia blamed me for things she did. Some things never change. The paperwork is real, I said calmly. Everything was approved by the estate lawyer. Sophia laughed coldly. The lawyer you chose? How convenient. I felt the room shift. Aunt Helen, who once invited me for Sunday dinners, now looked away. Cousin Peter, whom I helped with college applications, wouldn't meet my gaze. Even my husband, Michael, sat silently, unsure. I think it's best if you leave, Alexandra, Margaret said hesitantly. Leave? For what? I asked, though I already knew. This was Sophia's plan all along. Until we figure this out, Sophia snapped. The missing money, the way you tricked Dad. I stood up, grabbing my bag. You're making a mistake, I said softly. Grief makes people easy to manipulate. I looked straight at Sophia. Her face twitched for a second. Get out, she hissed, and don't come back until you return every cent. As I reached the door, Michael finally spoke. Alex, wait. But Sophia cut him off. Let her go. She's been using you too. I turned one last time. When you're ready for the truth, you know where to find me. Driving home, everything felt unreal. 3 months ago, we were a close family. Now, thanks to Sophia, I was the villain. But she didn't know the full story. I'd been watching her too. I had seen things that didn't add up. Dad had noticed them too. That's why he asked me to handle the estate. Stay sharp, Alexandra, he had told me. Things aren't always what they seem. Pulling into my driveway, I already had a plan. Sophia thought she had one. She thought I'd just accept this. She was wrong. I unlocked my door, ignoring the flood of angry messages from my family. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulling up the file I'd been building for 6 months. Game on, Sophia, I whispered. What happened next would change everything. Because while she played her game, she didn't realize I was about to uncover something that would reveal her lies once and for all. And I knew exactly where to look. The next morning, I drove to Dad's house early, using the key he'd given me before he passed. The family wouldn't be here. They always slept late after their dramatic meetings, something I counted on. The house was quiet, morning light streaming through the windows as I made my way to his study. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. The leather chair still held the indent from where he'd spent countless hours, his reading glasses still perched on the corner of the desk. But I wasn't here for memories. I was here for answers. Dad had been meticulous about his records, organizing everything with a system only he fully understood. Or so everyone thought. We'd spent months before his death going through files together, and he taught me his methods, showing me how each folder connected to another, creating a web of information that told the real story of our family's finances. I started with the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet, the one Sophia never bothered to check because it only contained old tax records. But Dad had taught me better. Behind those tax records was a false back, and behind that, "Found you," I whispered, pulling out a thin red notebook. The notebook contained Dad's private observations, things he'd noticed but never confronted directly. As I flipped through the pages, his familiar handwriting painted a very different picture than the one Sophia had presented. March 15th. Notice unusual transfers from the family trust. Sophia's signature doesn't match previous documents. Need to verify. April 3rd. James seems unaware of the new account opened in his name. Sophia handling all financial matters now. Concerning. May 1st. Alexandra's audit revealed systematic discrepancies. Keep this quiet for now. Building evidence. My hands were shaking as I read. Dad hadn't just suspected, he'd known. He'd been tracking Sophia's activities for months, maybe years. But why hadn't he confronted her? The answer came on the last page, dated just a week before his death. Hidden the final evidence in the place only Alexandra knows to look. She'll understand when the time comes. The blue box holds the truth. The blue box. My heart skipped a beat. When I was 12, Dad had shown me his secret hiding spot, a hidden compartment behind the study's fireplace mantel. Every good man needs a place to keep his secrets, he told me with a wink. This is where I keep the things that really matter. I moved to the fireplace, my fingers finding the hidden catch exactly where I remembered it. With a soft click, the panel popped open. Inside was a small blue box, dusty but intact. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were USB drives, documents, and a sealed letter addressed to me. But what caught my eye was a stack of bank statements, the real ones, not the doctored versions Sophia had presented. They told a very different story. The transfers she'd accused me of making, they all traced back to accounts she controlled. The suspicious withdrawals, they coincided perfectly with her recent luxury purchases, a new car, expensive jewelry, that surprise vacation she'd taken James on. But it was the letter that made my breath catch. My dear Alexandra, if you're reading this, then things have played out as I feared they might. Sophia has shown her true colors, and the family, in their grief, has likely believed her. They always did prefer a dramatic performance to quiet truth. I'm entrusting you with this evidence because you were the only one who saw through her act from the beginning. The USB drives contain security footage from my study. Yes, I had cameras installed after the first time I caught her forging my signature. The documents prove where the money really went. But most importantly, I've included my new will, the real one, not the version Sophia thinks she found. She's been playing a dangerous game, Alexandra, and it's time for the truth to come out. Use this wisely. The family will resist at first. Truth is always harder to accept than lies. But they need to know who really had their best interests at heart. I trust you to do what's right. Love, Dad. I sat back in his chair, the weight of everything settling over me. Dad hadn't just left me evidence, he'd left me a responsibility. He trusted me to expose the truth, to protect the family from someone who'd been systematically deceiving them. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. Can we talk? I looked at the evidence spread before me, then typed my reply. Yes. Bring everyone to Dad's house tomorrow at 2. It's time for the real family meeting. I gathered everything carefully, making copies of the key documents. Sophia had spent years building her deception, turning the family against me piece by piece. Tomorrow, that carefully constructed house of cards would come crashing down. As I locked up the study, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different somehow, stronger, more determined. Dad had trusted me with his secrets, and I wouldn't let him down. Tomorrow would change everything. But first, I had some preparing to do. At precisely 2 p.m. the next day, they all filed into Dad's study. Margaret, James, Michael, Aunt Helen, Cousin Peter, and finally Sophia, wearing an expression of manufactured concern. I stood behind Dad's desk, feeling his presence in every corner of the room. "What's this about, Alexandra?" Sophia asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Haven't you caused enough pain?" I smiled, remembering Dad's words about preferring dramatic performances. "Actually, Sophia, I think it's time we discussed your performance from yesterday." Before she could respond, I connected one of the USB drives to Dad's computer, turning the screen so everyone could see. Security footage began playing, showing Sophia sneaking into the study late at night, forging signatures, replacing documents. What is this?" Margaret whispered, her hand dropping from her pearls. "This," I said calmly, "is what really happened in Dad's final months." I spread out the real bank statements, the documented evidence of Sophia's transfers, the traced records of her purchases. While you were all grieving, while you were trusting Sophia's version of events, Dad was building a case. James stepped closer to the screen, his face pale. "Sophia, what did you do?" She laughed nervously. "This is obviously fake. She's trying to frame me." I pulled out Dad's letter, still sealed. "Margaret, would you like to read Dad's letter? I think you'll recognize his handwriting and his signature." As Margaret read aloud, Sophia's facade began to crack. The family listened in stunned silence as Dad's words exposed everything. The systematic theft, the manipulation, the careful groundwork Sophia had laid to blame me when the time came. "It's not true," Sophia said weakly, but even she didn't seem to believe it anymore. "The real will is in that blue box," I said quietly. Along with every piece of evidence Dad collected, he knew Sophia. He knew everything. The room erupted in chaos. James stumbled backward, looking at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. Aunt Helen was crying. Cousin Peter was furiously scrolling through the financial records on his tablet. Michael moved to stand beside me, taking my hand. "I'm so sorry I doubted you," he whispered. But I was watching Sophia. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling, and she knew it. She turned to run, but found Aunt Helen blocking the doorway. "Going somewhere?" Aunt Helen asked, her voice hard. "I think you owe us all some answers." The next few hours were intense. The family lawyer was called. Statements were made. Sophia's scheme had been larger than even I had imagined. She'd been siphoning money for years, playing family members against each other, building her own secret fortune at everyone's expense. By evening, she'd been asked to leave the house and the family. James, devastated by her betrayal, could barely look at her. The lawyer was already drafting papers to freeze her assets and begin recovery proceedings. As the dust settled, Margaret approached me, tears in her eyes. "Alexandra, can you ever forgive us? We should have known, should have trusted you like he did." I hugged her tightly. Dad used to say that family isn't about blind trust. It's about seeing the truth in people's actions, not just their words. Later that night, back in Dad's study, I sat in his chair one last time. The family had gathered in the living room, beginning a long process of healing and reconciliation. Michael brought me a cup of tea, sitting on the desk edge. "You know," he said softly, "your dad would be proud of how you handled this." I touched the letter, now framed and hanging on the wall. He trusted me to do the right thing. That's what family really means. Through the door, I could hear the murmur of voices, my family, coming back together, stronger for having faced the truth. Sophia had tried to tear us apart, but in the end, Dad's wisdom and trust had kept us whole. I picked up the blue box, now empty of its secrets but full of memories, ready to join the others. Michael asked, extending his hand. "Yes," I smiled, taking his hand. "It's time to be a family again." We walked out together, leaving the study exactly as Dad had kept it, a place where truth lived, where secrets were kept safe, and where, in the end, justice had prevailed. The family's healing would take time, but we would face it together, stronger for having weathered this storm. And somewhere, I knew, Dad was smiling, knowing his trust had not been misplaced. "You're not a real father," Emma shouted, her voice shaking the quiet living room. "Stop pretending you care." Lily, my younger daughter, stood beside her, arms crossed, nodding. I gripped the arms of my old chair, feeling their words hit like sharp knives. After raising them alone for 20 years, this was the pain I never expected. "I'm Daniel," I wanted to say. "I've been your father since you were little. I changed your diapers, helped you with homework, stayed up when you were sick. But none of that mattered now. We found our real dad, Lily said coldly. She threw a picture on the table, a rich-looking man standing in front of a huge house. He's successful. Unlike you. I looked at the photo, then at my daughters. Emma, 23, and Lily, 21, stared at me like I was nothing. This was the same house where I had bandaged their scraped knees, wiped away their tears, and cheered them on in life. We took a DNA test, Emma said. He's our biological father, and he wants to make up for lost time. He can give us what you never could. I thought about the old box in the attic, full of letters, photos, and secrets I'd kept to protect them. But now wasn't the time to reveal the truth. If that's what you believe, I said calmly, standing up, I won't stop you. That's it. Lily snapped. You're not even going to fight for us? You can't fight for people who have already made up their minds, I answered. Emma grabbed her bag. We're moving in with him. He's paying for our college. Something you could never afford. I watched as they packed, taking down family pictures from the walls. Had they been planning this for weeks? Maybe longer? When you leave, I said softly, take whatever you want. The house will be empty for a while anyway. Lily hesitated. What do you mean? I got a job offer far away, I said. Since you found your real father, there's nothing keeping me here. Emma scoffed. Good. We don't need you pretending anymore. They left without looking back. I went to the attic, opening the box of truths they never asked for. Inside were police reports, letters, and proof of who their biological father really was. The kind of man he had been. The kind of man I had protected them from. But they weren't ready for that yet. That night, I made 3 calls. One to my lawyer, one to my friend at the police station, and one to accept my new job. My daughters would learn the truth someday. Maybe not now, maybe not soon, but eventually. As I packed up my life, I remembered something Emma once said when she was 6. Even if you're not my real dad, you're my real father because you choose me every day. If only she remembered that now. The next morning, as I loaded the last box into my car, I took one last look at our home. The garden we planted, the driveway where they learned to ride bikes, the porch where we had laughed and dreamed. Goodbye, girls, I whispered. I hope you find what you're looking for. Deep down, I knew they would. And when they did, I would still be here, waiting. 3 months passed like a slow-motion replay of my worst moments. Each morning, I'd wake up in my new apartment in Seattle, check my phone for messages that never came, and try to build a life that didn't revolve around being a father. My lawyer, Michael, kept me updated. They tried to access their college funds, he told me during one of our weekly calls. They seemed surprised to find out they couldn't without your signature. And their real father? I asked, staring out at the rain-soaked city skyline. James Anderson. Michael's voice dripped with disgust. Apparently isn't as wealthy as he pretended to be. The mansion was rented for photos, and his supposed business empire is more smoke and mirrors than substance. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to jump on the next flight home. Have they figured it out yet? Not entirely, but they're starting to ask questions. The right ones. The first crack in their perfect new life appeared 6 weeks after I left. Emma called late one night, her voice small and uncertain. I let it go to voicemail. Dad, Daniel, she stumbled over the words. Something's weird with James. He keeps asking about Mom's inheritance, about our trust funds. I know we said, call me back maybe. I didn't. A week later, Lily texted, the house feels strange without your stupid dad jokes. James doesn't even know how I take my coffee. I saved the message but didn't respond. Then came the morning I'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. Michael called earlier than usual, his voice urgent. They found out about James' past, he said without preamble. He got drunk last night, started bragging about how easy it was to find them online, how a DNA test and some fake photos were all it took to get access to their lives. My hand tightened around the phone. Are they okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally, they're asking about the box, Daniel. I think it's time. I had expected this moment, planned for it even, but it still felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Follow the protocol we discuss, I said. They need to understand everything, not just parts of the truth. That afternoon, Emma and Lily arrived at Michael's office, their faces pale and drawn. He handed them each a letter I'd written, explaining that the box contained 20 years of history, their history, but it came with conditions. Your father, Michael told them, requires that you review everything together, in order with me present. No skipping ahead, no taking anything home. You'll understand why when you see what's inside. They agreed. In my apartment, I sat staring at my phone, knowing that at that very moment my daughters were learning the truth about their mother, a woman who had abandoned them not once, but repeatedly. They were discovering who James Anderson really was, a con man with a history of targeting vulnerable families. And hardest of all, they were learning what it had cost me to keep them safe, to give them a childhood free from the weight of these truths. Hours passed. My phone remained silent. Then, just as the Seattle sunset painted my windows in shades of orange and pink, a text arrived from Michael. They know everything now. Ball's in their court. I walked out onto my small balcony, remembering all the times I'd wanted to tell them the truth. When Emma had cried about not looking like me at age 12. When Lily had asked why we never talked about their mother during her 16th birthday. When they both insisted that finding their real father would fill the holes in their hearts. But I'd made a promise, to them, to myself, to my late wife, that I would protect them from these truths until they were ready to face them. My phone buzzed again. A message from Emma. Dad, we're so sorry. Please come home. Then Lily, we were wrong. So wrong. You're our real father. You always were. I let the tears fall freely now, 20 years of protected secrets finally finding their way into the light. But I didn't respond immediately. They needed time to process, to understand, to really grasp what it meant to choose family over biology. Instead, I sent a simple text to Michael. Take care of my girls. They know where to find me when they're ready. Because sometimes being a father means waiting for your children to find their way back to you, even when every instinct screams to run to them first. The rain started falling as night settled over Seattle. But for the first time in 3 months, I felt something like peace. They knew the truth now. All of it. The rest was up to them. I went inside, made a cup of coffee, and sat down to write one more letter, not of explanation or defense, but of forgiveness. Because that's what real fathers do. 2 weeks later, I was organizing my small home office when the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I knew who it would be before I even opened the door. There they stood, Emma and Lily, their eyes red from crying, clutching the photo albums I'd left behind. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Emma stepped forward, her voice breaking. You kept every single drawing we ever made, she said, holding up a faded piece of paper with a child's scrawl. Even the ugly ones. They were never ugly to me, I replied softly. Lily launched herself into my arms, sobbing. We were so stupid, Dad, so incredibly stupid. I held her tight, opening my other arm for Emma, who hesitated only a second before joining our embrace. For a long moment, we just stood there, letting years of hurt and misunderstanding wash away with their tears. Inside, they settled on my couch, looking around at my modest apartment. Their eyes landed on the wall where I'd hung their photos, not just the perfect family portraits, but the messy, real moments. Lily with cake all over her face on her 5th birthday. Emma asleep on my shoulder during a camping trip, both of them covered in mud after we tried to plant a garden in the rain. You didn't have to protect us from the truth, Emma said finally. About Mom, about everything. Yes, I did, I replied, sitting across from them. You needed to grow up feeling loved, not abandoned. You needed to believe in family and trust in the good things. The truth could wait until you were ready to understand it. But we hurt you, Lily whispered. We said such awful things. I leaned forward, taking their hands in mine. Do you remember what I always told you about family? That it's not about blood, they recited together, just like when they were little. It's about who chooses to stay, Emma finished, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. And I chose you, I said firmly, every single day for 20 years. Even these past 3 months, I was still choosing you. Choosing to let you learn these lessons on your own, even though it broke my heart to stay away. They told me everything then, about how James's true nature emerged once the initial excitement wore off. How he'd started asking about money, making excuses about his supposed wealth being tied up in investments. How he'd gotten angry when they couldn't access their college funds. But the worst part, Lily said, was realizing that he didn't know us at all. He didn't know that I'm allergic to strawberries, or that Emma needs complete silence to study, or that we both hate cilantro. He never asked about our lives, Emma added. He just wanted to be the hero who rescued us from our fake father. I made us dinner as we talked, their favorite pasta recipe, the one they'd helped me perfect over countless Sunday dinners. The familiar routine felt like healing, like coming home. What happens now? Lily asked as we cleared the dishes. That's up to you, I said. I'm here, I've always been here, but you need to decide what you want. They exchanged a look, then Emma spoke. We want to come home, Dad. If you'll have us. The house feels wrong without you, Lily added. Nothing feels right without you. I pulled them close again, these daughters of my heart if not my blood. Home isn't the house, I told them. Home is wherever we're together. But yes, of course you can come home. Later that night, as they prepared to leave, promising to return the next weekend to help me pack, Emma handed me a package. We made this, she said. After we read everything in the box. Inside was a new photo album. On the first page was a picture of me holding them as babies, and beneath it in their handwriting, to our real father, the one who chose us every day. The pages that followed were filled with photos, ticket stubs, birthday cards, 20 years of memories, each annotated with their thoughts and apologies and love. On the last page was a recent photo of them, holding a sign. DNA doesn't make a father. Love does. We're going to spend the rest of our lives making this up to you, Lily promised. I shook my head, smiling through my tears. No, we're going to spend the rest of our lives being a family. That's all I've ever wanted. As I watched them drive away, I thought about the box in Michael's office, now empty of its secrets. Those truths had served their purpose, but they weren't what mattered anymore. What mattered was the choice we were all making now, to be family, to forgive, to love not because of blood or obligation, but because we wanted to. I went back inside and opened the photo album again, adding a note of my own beneath their last picture, to my daughters, who taught me that sometimes the hardest paths lead us right back home. Love, your real dad.